Welcome to the Sisters in Loss podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women that replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women in the United States, according to the CDC and NIH. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, or stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, and hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. Freeman, and you'll hear me interview other sisters in loss from around the world who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Storytelling is powerful. Storytelling is activism. Storytelling is healing. Now let's get started. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm so happy that you're here and that we are connected. I would love for you to introduce yourself, share a little bit about yourself and what you do.
So my name is Angie. I am a mom of one, married nearly a decade, Louisiana native, but rooted here in Atlanta, Georgia. So I call myself a Creole peach. I've been here over 20 years, but can't let go of the Louisiana roots. I'm a marketing strategist by day, and what I like to loosely say, public voice, new public voice on infertility, following my passion. So just sharing my story around that and the ups, downs, and everything in between. So I've been really leaning into that, and enjoying meeting a lot of wonderful women and men along the way, yourself involved in following and loving your space and the intentionality behind it. So looking, of course, connecting with different women who can share in that experience with me, but also lend a voice to those who are in the trenches, and then people who support those who are in it. Because when I was going through it 10 years ago, there weren't many faces, there weren't many spaces. Definitely, there were no Facebook groups, there were no Instagram groups, TikTok, none of that then. So I love the direction that so many people who've experienced it and who've gone through it have kind of paving that way and opening the conversation. And it's been great and refreshing and warm to see.
Absolutely, it has been. And like you said, it has not, 10 years ago, there were not many spaces that were out there. And then even then, they weren't really optimized where you could Google them. They'll come up on those first couple pages,
Yeah.
they're probably all the way at the end. So, being able to have those safe spaces is necessary on this journey. So I would love for you to just kind of take us back all the way and really share with us your journey to motherhood.
So went through my 20s and 30s, like trying not to get pregnant. I'll be honest, like went to college, graduated, did all the things, career, met someone, dating in Atlanta had its own trials. We have that reputation here, but met my wonderful husband. I think I was 36, in 2014. We married in 2016 and immediately embarked upon the journey of getting pregnant. So a few months in, went to my doctor, like, okay, things are moving slow. And she's like, okay, we'll give it 6 months. You're over 35. So, we know how that goes. You're over 35, you give it 6 months. If nothing's happening, then come back. And went back 6 months after trying, and then sent for the routine exams, the blood work, um, then the HSG and so forth. It was during that HSG appointment. I say I still have some trauma from that, from if anyone's experienced that, and the pain of the solution, and realized there that my tubes were blocked. So both tubes blocked, given that sort of loose diagnosis there on the spot by a radiologist who I would say wasn't so warm. I was alone at the appointment, didn't think it was something that my husband needed to accompany me to. And then to be told after such a painful procedure that, well, both your tubes are blocked, but your uterus is beautiful. So we can just always go around the tubes. They can go around the tubes, do IVF, and you'll be fine. So left that. I remember sitting in that room before I got dressed and calling my husband. He's like, "Do I need to come and meet you?" And I'm like, "Okay, no, I'm okay. I can make it. I can make it." And then processing that, what that looks like now with IVF, immediately left that appointment, went back to work like so many of us do. It's like it was just a routine appointment. Still got to go back to my 9 to 5 and present as nothing happened. Like I didn't just get this news. But luckily, I did have a colleague at the time who had just had her eggs frozen. So in knowing that and then having conversation with her, I immediately went into like IVF mode. Our company covers IVF at 80%, very little out of pocket, which was unheard of for that time. It's a global company, so I think they were just light years ahead as far as covering any reproductive health care expenses. So I did benefit and have the privilege to at least have that, and immediately went into like, okay, IVF is the route. I didn't even take time to process, let alone like second opinion or anything. OBGYN is like, okay, we'll support you in IVF and full steam ahead on that. I don't even think I spent a lot of time like researching doctors. Like my friend's doctor was great. So went to her, we connected, let's move forward and thinking, hey, everything will be fine with IVF. But by that time, I'm like 38 then, approaching 40. And it's like, oh, diminished egg reserve and, those conversations. And okay, first cycle, felt miserably, no embryos there. I remember even getting the call the day after our anniversary. I was in the parking garage, headed into work, that the one embryo we thought would make it to blast did not, and kind of died off on our actual anniversary. So I just remember crying in that parking garage and thinking, I don't want to do this again. I don't want to do this again. And it feeling like it's not that I felt like I was giving up. It's just like something in my gut said, don't do this again. And I remember talking to my husband, and he's like, I support you in whatever you want to do. I'm, with us not pursuing it. Let's just hear the doctor out. We go in for another appointment with her, and she's talking to us about maybe a more natural cycle. She went really strong with the first cycle, like maybe let's take a more natural approach. And I just still remember sitting there saying, I like don't want to do this again. And so she was the first, my RE was the first to say, well, if you're not really married to carrying a baby, like if you don't feel like you have to carry a baby, even in conversations around donor eggs, I still didn't feel like I wanted to do that. She said, well, what about adoption? And me and my husband had talked about adoption. He had multiple family members who had adopted, cousins. I had not. I hadn't experienced that, and I always kind of questioned, like, well, did biology really matter? But in that moment, I realized, well, maybe it really doesn't matter. So we decided to explore adoption, but at the same time, even during like before my infertility diagnosis, I was undergoing some tests around elevated liver enzymes. So simultaneously, no one ever connected the dots or questioned, well, your liver enzymes are like 10 times, almost 10 times the normal range, but we're still doing IVF, we're still trying to get pregnant, we're still doing all these things, and we're testing to find out what is causing the elevation in liver enzymes. So I would say it was 7 years before I even came to a diagnosis after multiple biopsies and just these just inconclusive things that I was finally diagnosed with a very rare autoimmune disease. But at the time, still not knowing that the two could impact each other, that it wasn't until we had moved on, adopted my son, which we had a beautiful birth family, beautiful experience adopting him. It wasn't until I switched primary care doctors later on that she connected the dots and asked the question. She said, do you realize that not getting pregnant might have saved your life? And I'm like, huh? And she's like, When women are pregnant, we're looking at the elevation in liver enzymes. It's something that happens naturally. And you going into a pregnancy with liver enzymes nearly 10 times the normal range could have sent you into liver failure. And not saying that for certain, but it's very possible that it could have caused harm to you or the baby. So the gut feeling that you were feeling during that time and the not wanting to continue IVF and the, no one connecting the dots, it very well might have been, and I know now, like I'm a believer. I believe that it was God nudging me and saying, you don't need to get pregnant. You shouldn't be pregnant. And I will bless you with this beautiful baby boy, and he will be yours, and you will have this life. And you just don't, I just didn't see it then. But I'm so glad in this moment, looking back, that I trusted my gut in that moment.
Mm. I want to highlight the biggest thing throughout this is that you trusted your friend and went with her person because you knew she was successful and was just like, hey, if my friend really likes her person, I'm gonna go through that clinic process. I'm gonna go through that process. And then the other part of this, outside of just trusting your friend and then obviously trusting the providers, you really trusted your gut and you really trusted your intuition. You trusted the Holy Spirit. I mean, you trusted, whatever you all want to call it.
Whatever you want to call it, the
Whatever y'all want
universe,
to
whatever.
call
I'm
it.
gonna call it what I call it.
But
Yeah.
but 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 God was speaking to you by telling you, hey, after this one cycle, not to do it again. And I think that that is a big part of this journey is like, you know, we're taking these steps out on faith and
Mhm.
saying, God, we want you to bless this. We want you to give us this desire. And many times we question our faith on
Yeah.
this journey and don't always trust ourselves. So I would love for you to talk about and share more of just the grief of this because there is a big grieving process. Obviously, you have your baby that you adopted, and we'll talk about the adoption process, your son that you adopted. But there's a grieving that happens when things are not going the way we expected, especially when we feel like, we've done everything right, especially for many of us Black women who are high achievers, who are type A, who check all the boxes, and really are rooted and grounded in our word and in our faith. And we're like, God, like this is the one thing I asked you to bless.
Right.
And you
Right.
didn't do this
Yeah.
for me. Now I have to dream a new dream. But I also have to grieve this life that I thought I was gonna have of birthing my own child. So can you
Yeah.
share more about just your grieving journey?
So I will say that as of recently, I lost my mom a year ago. So the grief that I feel now, it's almost like I think back and I'm like, it's not the same grief, but I recognize that infertility it sent me into a grieving process that I really didn't have words for then because I don't know if others feel this way, but when you think of infertility, but you don't really attribute it to the word grief. And we hear a lot about grief more now, like it's grief counseling, like it's almost like a buzzword now, like people are identifying grief. But at the time, I really didn't see it as grief. Like reflecting now and like going through this process of grieving my mother, it's so familiar. And I realized that I was in a heavy laden grief, but still like functioning, still high functioning. So there's a grief that you feel in like, gosh, my body can't do the one thing that it's made to do. And it's hard to articulate. And even in times like I look back and I'm like, it's so easy for some people to get pregnant. And like I did all these things and I felt like I did it at the right time. So how could I not be? And I can remember like me and my husband were in a Sam's Club one time and this beautiful girl, she was a teenager, but she just, for me, she looked like the both of us. And he was like, it's kind of weird that you keep looking at her. And she's looking at you like, why is this lady looking at me? But in that moment, I still remember that was a piece of grief. Like, gosh, our kid, our DNA, like, what does that look like? And that was when we were going through the IVF process. So the grief, it was in stages. And I still sit with the grief. There's still moments when I see a pregnant woman or I'm in a space when women are talking their birthing stories, and mine is unique and still beautiful, but different, and not having experienced that. So I do grieve the process of like, what would that have felt like for a baby to kick? Like, what would that have felt like if I had been pregnant or if I just had the opportunity to? So the grief has been, it still comes in waves, and it's just identifying it now, and the healing. I think for me more so the grief was like with myself. Like I felt like I wasn't enough, and even though my husband always said I chose you, even if we never had any kids, or we we it was just you and me, I had you and I chose you. And it was never, I never attributed that to him. It was more so I felt like I grieved a part of me that I felt would come so easy. And like you said, I mean, we go through all this and we accomplish all this and we just expect that it's going to be easy for us. So we grieve the loss of like what that life had to look like, and then preparing for like, what does the journey look like now that I can't have what I want? And I'm an only child. So for much of my life, I got what I wanted. And I mean, it's a certain level of privilege to that. So it's took a minute for me to like sit with that and say, okay, you got everything you wanted and you just expected that you were going to get this too. And you didn't. And so you have to live with that and be okay with that and heal through that. And so I'm not healed, still in the healing process. I don't think that when people say they're healed from something, I don't know if I believe that. I think we're always healing from something. Yeah.
I completely agree. I always say that we are always healing. We're always grieving. We're always healing. I think it's
Yeah.
just the how we grow through it and go through it are
Mhm.
different,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially as
Absolutely.
life transitions. And I think that, as you mentioned before, as you mentioned about your mom, I'm here, sorry to hear about her passing, but that does bring up another level of grief in us, and I'm happy that you were able to distinguish the differences, but the similarities of how you were grieving then. Many times when we lose the expectation of something, of a baby, it is very similar, but it is very distinctively different than the memories you hold for those you lost.
Mhm.
That are in the physical. So it's like, well, it's the expectation and then it's these memories, but they're still there and they're still present and you still feel them in your body. Um,
I love when you say that, feel it in your body,
you
because I
do.
think I reckon it's been more familiar to me because the grief I feel in my body is heavy. Like I feel it in my body. So even in therapy, my therapist like, where in your body do you feel it? You feel it in your head, or you feel it in your lower body? Because if you're maybe your head, you're overthinking something. And like when my mom passed, I couldn't do anything until 10 a.m. That was just like I had to like just lay in the bed. And I remember those times like when I was grieving fertility, is I just wanted to lay there. It's like my body felt heavy. So it's like the grief presents for me in a very familiar way. And now I recognize, like, oh, wow, that was grief that I was in. That wasn't just a longing, that was real grief.
It was definitely the heaviness of grief. And then obviously life continues to ebb and flow. So I would love for you to talk about the adoption process. Do you have an open adoption? Is it closed? Just take us through that journey because a lot of people don't recognize the details that it takes to adopt a
Mhm.
baby, but
Yeah.
also, um, you know, the connectiveness that you can have once
Mhm.
that baby's yours. So I would love for you to talk about that.
Yeah. So, when IVF failed, then it's like I often think like I never really took a moment to process what was next. We moved from IVF to then that conversation with our RE to then, okay, what does it look like for adoption? And I'll acknowledge privilege. Most people don't have the privilege of private adoption or multiple cycles of IVF and insurance covering it and all the expenses that it entails. So I do acknowledge that the privilege that I had to explore other paths to parenthood. We did look into going through fostering to adopt. I know myself well enough that I would be completely attached to a baby, and then to have to hand that baby back, and they let you know up front your job as a foster parent is to take care of the child, nurture the child until the parent is able to parent. And so for me, like we even met with a few families that we knew who had fostered to adopt, and they had had multiple babies come through their home, but then they had to disconnect with that child or take it back for a short period of time and then disconnect again. So I knew that that wouldn't work for me. So I like to call her my little angel. There was a family member who needed some help with a baby, and my husband and I did help out for a few weeks, and she helped me realize that, oh my gosh, I don't want to give her back, but I understand now that I could totally put my whole heart into raising a child that's not mine. And she went back to live with her mother, and she's amazing. That's 8 years ago now, almost 9 years, and wonderful. But we did, when we began to pursue private adoption, we started with a consulting agency here in Atlanta, and they are almost kind of like a preparation but matchmaking sort of consulting. It's like an agency. It's almost like a matchmaking service in a way. They do have relationships with different agencies nationally to then match parents, interested parents, and you create a book, and you have this book almost, it's like a tabletop book, almost marketing yourself, and they share that with different families. And we actually met a social worker through that process who became like a family member to us, and we did match with a few families, and those didn't work out, change of heart, change of mind. I think it might have been maybe 9 of those we went through, so it was a lot. So that was still had a toll on me. And then our social worker came to us and said, I have someone that you're going to absolutely adore. And this was like right at my 40th. I was about turning 40 then. And I was like, you know what? I think we're going to chill out for a little bit. It's kind of been a lot of ups and downs over the last like year and a half. It's just been a lot between IVF and then, those decisions. And she said, just meet us for lunch. So we talked to our parents about it. And my mom was like, just go for lunch. Like I feel something about this one. Something about this one feels right. Give it just one shot. And we met her for lunch, and she looked like me, and I'm 5'9" and she's 5'9", and we like instantly connected. And she was like, if you show up for us, this is your baby. And she was due the next month. So it's like, gosh, we're preparing for a boy. Like, what is this? We thought all the others were girls, and we instantly connected with her. Wonderful birth mom. We're there at the hospital with her and the and father. Have video and things to share with my son of like her teaching me to swaddle him. It was this amazing experience. And we are connected. It's not open in a way where we are like spending holidays. Like there are many families who do that. It's not quite that open, but she has connection to us. We talk on an annual basis. We share pictures and love and all the things. And it's again, she's my angel. So our son, amazing, beautiful. He's 8. He'll be 8 this year, and just the brightest light, and our little blessing. So when I always say, it's like in dark moments, if you kind of look toward the light, just try to look toward the light, look toward the glimmers. You might not see it at the time, but looking back now, it's like all that led me to him and us. And it has been a happily ever after. And I understand that that's not everyone's story. I totally understand that. I talk to more women who've gone through this journey that's not their happy ending, but I'm very blessed in that it worked out for us.
Yes, you are very blessed, and I'm so happy that you all do have some connection, because that's always a question that could come up later on, but I'm sure that he knows all the details
All the
to this
love, all the
point,
things.
especially
Yeah.
as he's gotten older
Yeah.
and is more inquisitive, because you know
Yeah.
how they start to ask
Yeah,
all
they
the
start. And
questions.
we've always had the conversations around, if he would say something like, well, when I was in your belly, and I'm like, well, you were in my heart. And we have pictures up from like the finalization. It's like our attorney, because we love that we live in Atlanta. So the judge is black, our
Everybody
attorney's black,
black.
we black. We're at the we're in the courthouse, and we just love that picture. And we did it in black and white with like a color picture of him. So it's always been up. So he doesn't have a whole lot of questions about it. He
Yeah.
just knows love. He will. I know that he will at some point,
At
but
some
you
point when
know,
he gets older.
we're just mom and dad, and he's
Mom
our
and
boy.
dad with all the love and then all the family around. So I'm sure
Yeah,
he's
he
he's
doesn't understand that. He don't ask no questions about that. It's like, oh, whatever. I wasn't in your belly. Okay, fine.
okay.
Just go on with life. Yeah, but
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love it. All right. So I got some rapid fire questions I want to ask you.
okay.
What is one word that describes your grief journey?
Cloudy.
Mm.
Cloudy because it's like I could see, but I couldn't see. It's like
Oh.
if you're looking up at the clouds, you'll see the sun, you know it's up there, but it's like the clouds were in my way. I could see, I could make enough out of it to like keep going,
Mhm.
but it was a very cloudy journey, very cloudy journey.
What's one thing you wish someone said to you?
You are not alone.
Mm.
Yeah. It was very lonely. I was in a place where, almost in that kind of sandwich space where I had friends who in their 20s and early 30s that had babies and their
Mhm.
kids were older. And then I had my single friends and friends who didn't have kids. So, and then here I was like in between, and it was a lonely space. So I really couldn't look to my friends because neither side understood. And then, like I said, 10 years ago, all I could find was a blog, and they certainly didn't look like us, those who
Mhm.
were writing those blogs. Very few of us were like actually talking about this. So it was very lonely. And I even had my best friend told me recently, as I started to talk more about this, she was like, in listening to the things you say, I never knew you felt like that. I never knew you were going through that.
Mm.
Like, I never talked about it.
Yeah, no, it's so
Yeah.
true. It's so true. What's one thing you would say to someone that's newly experiencing infertility?
I would say time is of the essence, but not to the point where you can not pause enough to get the insight you need, do the research you need, trust your body, and trust your gut and your intuition. I feel like in that moment I moved quickly to a lot of things. I don't have regrets because I know that the right people were in the right place and it led me to where I am. But I made a lot of decisions in haste. And I would just tend to say the gut that when I often would joke like I'm an IVF dropout, like I one cycle and I was done. But I'm just glad that I did trust my gut and I didn't rush to like go through another cycle. And luckily I didn't have a RE who like pushed us that direction. Especially, and I think that could have been easy because with cost wise, a lot of people can't rush to the next cycle because cost is a factor. Cost wasn't a factor for us because we had the insurance, but she still was very patient and kind and very she was smart. Like that's what attracted me to her. Like she gave a lot of intel and insight and she was just so knowledgeable, and it that helped in the process.
Love that. Where do you find community, or are you still learning to?
I'm still learning too. So just a slight plug, like I'm in a mom group that is amazing. It's my Leaking Moms. Like that's a mom community of like Black moms that it's just like they're so supportive. I think I'm one of only two adopted moms in there, but
Probably
never
are.
once.
Because I
I
always
think
say, every time I'm in that group, I'm always like, I think I'm probably the only cerebral palsy mom in this group too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, but I never felt other. Like I
Yeah.
always warm, and like I have an Atlanta mom group that's kind of formed from that and really good friends, and they're just a good group. So that mom community as a mom has been supportive, but I'm really still finding my way in the infertility space. And I think that's why I'm speaking out more because it there are many of us, but still few of us. if
Absolutely.
that makes sense.
No,
So
absolutely.
it's
It definitely makes
still
sense.
forming in that space, and especially and in the adopted community, it's even
Even
less.
more,
Yeah,
even
yeah,
more succinct and small, which
yeah,
I can only imagine in the adoptive communities, particularly for Black people, is even probably smaller for
yeah,
sure
yeah,
compared to like your foster community, maybe a little bit bigger.
yeah.
A lot
But
more
you'll be
people do foster.
surprised. Like I was in an Uber just talking to a guy after a trip, and he started talking about his daughter going to the same college I went to, and we started talking about their age difference, and he started talking about his oldest son was adopted and when did he tell them, and it just you just don't know when you're having conversations, like you just don't know who. I always say it's like the God winks and God
It
like
is.
in it, like you never know when you're just riding in an Uber and strike up a conversation and can get some advice from someone whose son is now 25 and like what that experience was like, sharing the information with his kid in different stages. So you find community if you're open. I feel like if you're open and uh, open to talking about your own story, you'll be surprised at the people you will meet along the way who have stories as well.
Absolutely. Last rapid fire question is, what does never healing alone mean to you?
Never healing alone means, like I just said, just speaking up. I
Mhm.
think if you're talking about what you're feeling, what you're going through, someone needs your story, and you probably need that person's story too. So the healing can happen together. So I think never healing alone is just being more open to share your voice, share your story, and then be open to hearing others.
I love it. So where can we connect with you after this episode?
I am on Instagram and TikTok, Angie Booker. So please reach out, tap in, DM me. My DMs are always open. Often just kind of sharing my lived experience, open to hearing what other people have going on, people who have friends and colleagues and brothers and sisters going through infertility. I think that they could benefit from hearing what we have to say as well, because if we're 1 in 6, and I think the numbers might be like 1 in 8 or something, 1 in 7, 1 in 8 now,
Mhm.
what that looks like, and being a support, someone who's either experienced it or going through it, and we need all the warm hugs and support that we can. So connect with me there.
Well, thank you so much, Angie, for being on the podcast and sharing your story.
Thank you for
I
having
know
me.
that everyone will benefit from it because we all need community in every shape of way. So hopefully those who are looking will reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com to stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter. Please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.